Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. It is Conference Championship weekend. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined by Denny Carter, by Kyle Dvorchak, and special guest, the Lord himself, Richard. You may know him as Rich Hribar. We thought it would be Patrick Crane's quote in Indonesia, which I've already made that joke, quote unquote, but he is literally in Indonesia. And thought, what better time to bring in the GOAT? Why the Lord instead of the GOAT, by the way? Remember, people don't remember the Hribar lore. Remember when you got self-conscious and removed the Lord from your handle?
I did. You were actually the reason that I changed it back, because for those that are not indoctrinated at this point, I went with changed to Roto Reeves for a period there, because I just thought, like, oh, now that I'm starting to get a following, maybe Lord Reeves is too pretentious. Like however it's like Fantasy Guru 21 or like whatever. And then Rotopat was actually, I heard on a show, and he was like, I can't believe Rich changed his Twitter handle. This is the dumbest move I ever made. And I was like, well, if Rotopat thinks so, I better grab this thing. Luckily, no one scooped it up, and I was able to reclaim it quickly.
Well, look,
when was this? Like, what year?
It was like 2016,
1998. No, it was like 2018, probably.
2018, whatever it was your Garth Brooks, Chris Gaines moment.
It was,
and I think we all kind of fall for that once in a while. And I speak for everyone when I say, thank goodness Lord Reeves returned.
Well, there was a period there where you thought in this industry you needed to be professional, and it turns out you do not.
No, God, no. That set you back pretty hard.
Never recovered, really.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, I don't like Rotopat either. It was because at Patrick Daugherty, it was too many characters because of my ridiculous Irish name, and like it was not enough. It was too many characters, so I had to go short. And I always thought Rotopat sounded kind of corny or even pretentious, but then I've kind of embraced it's become like my Pele. Like, this is my one word moniker. And so I've embraced that aspect.
So
Lord, too. Lord, seems like you had some personal news last week. Bringing home trophies, bringing home championships. What's this all about?
Yeah, man. We went to Nationals. It's always the weekend of Martin Luther King weekend.
Nationals for what, though?
Flag football Nationals, USFTL. I played forever, when I was in my 20s. I played until I was about 35. What kind of pushed a lot of us, we had a teammate of ours break his neck, and everyone was kind of like, oh, man, I'm too old to be like having a serious injury.
Yeah, I would say so.
So that pushed us off, but the guys that still play and then, couldn't give it up, they went back. They go every year for Nationals. We've won it before, so we're grandfathered in. We can come whenever. They asked me to come back, so I took part in it. I think they asked me to come back because I had lost a bunch of weight, but they didn't realize I didn't get any speed. I didn't gain any speed back. Like, I'm thinner, but still just as slow, man. Out here like a young Brian Brennan.
So is your game like Devontae Parker then, just on the outside? I don't think people probably don't realize how large you are. Like, how tall are you? Like 6'4"?
No, I'm only like 6'1", man. No,
6'2".
Yeah, no, Rich. Many are calling Rich the Ed McCaffrey of flag football.
I wish that was the case.
That's a good compliment.
Denny, many are saying they have no idea what you're talking about.
Ed McCaffrey is the father of Christian McCaffrey. He once played in the NFL, and I used to have him on my fantasy team. So
that was before.
He famously never wore like any kind of padding. He just got destroyed by. That's when you could actually level wide receivers. If concussions were a thing there, Ed McCaffrey definitely racked up, I would say, a couple dozen.
McCaffrey would have worn the single bar kicker's mask if that was allowed.
Yes.
Rich, do you have any idea the last time any of us won a trophy is, by the way? Ever? Denny or Kyle, have either one of you ever won a sporting trophy?
Yes.
No.
Yes, I have. I don't know. I mean,
I did. I won a few medals.
Rings, man. That's what we got.
I won some cross country medals, but
this is nice. That's a very
the grind setters.
Rotopat, you said sport, not survival.
I know exactly. I know. I was gonna say it's not a sport.
And listen, I won trophies before. Our coddled culture gave trophies to everyone. Okay, and it was before. It was only when the winners got trophies.
I missed that era by. It had to have been less than a few years because I didn't really get participation trophies growing up. I would have killed for it. Would have been my first.
Yeah, it used to be in the 90s. If you got second, the referee just sat you down in front of the other team and went through player by player and said what you did wrong in that game.
Right.
And you were all supposed to cry. The other team actually couldn't accept the first place trophy until every kid on the second place team was crying.
Was weeping.
Yeah, I mean, other than being in therapy for 30 years, I think it was character building.
Right. It worked out for everyone in the end. This is what we're saying.
Yeah. Do you think, by the way, this you will not even believe. I think the last thing I got a literal trophy for, because cross country they do medals. This is not a joke. When I was 14, I got a high jump medal.
Wow.
A trophy. I'm not tall enough to be a good high jumper. I'll tell you that. And this is like a very small.
Did think Rich was like 6'5" just a few minutes ago, which is a classic short king move.
No,
anyone who's over 5'11", when I look up at them, like, what is this guy, like a 7-footer? Get him in the NBA. Like, oh, I'm 6'1".
It's true. Yeah, Reeves is like, I'm 5'10".
Yeah, Kyle kept calling me Shaq when we saw each other.
Denny always thinks I'm taller. I'm pretty sure you're taller than me. No joke. I'm a legit 5'10". Everyone always says if you say 5'10", you're actually 5'9".
You guys both have legitimate quaffs though that add.
That does add inches.
Look, all I know is when we're together at a conference or whatever, you're taller than me. If you're 5'10",
it's just my presence. It's just my presence.
If you're 5'10", then I have to be remeasured. You know, I'm 5'7". That's what this means.
You got to be remeasured, and it's just the way I fill up a room with my booming voice and argumentative takes. Denny adds 2 inches. We're going to preview these conference championship games. We're going to start with the news of the day from Thursday. The first domino in the head coaching carousel has fallen with the Carolina Panthers getting probably the best retread. I always forget how to pronounce it. How do you say it? Retread or retread? Retread. They got the best retread candidate, I would say, and Frank Reich. I know a lot of people were hoping Steve Wilkes would get this job on a permanent basis after he did an extremely good job on an interim basis, but I think someone pointed out the Panthers, 7 of the 9 candidates they interviewed were offensive minded. Like they clearly want to get this offense fixed after just years of dysfunction. And I think Frank Reich did a pretty good job in Indianapolis, to be honest, until they kind of finally overestimated his quarterback whisperer abilities. Like he basically got to the point like Carson Wentz, I'll have this guy in the Pro Bowl, and which I guess he probably did make the Pro Bowl since every quarterback makes the Pro Bowl. But Frank Reich seemed like he was doing well until he basically overestimated his quarterback abilities. Just wondering if you guys agree. I think this is a good defensible hire for the Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he had done the quarterback thing 3 years in a row. It worked the best with Phillip Rivers. It nearly worked with Carson Wentz. It was one Jaguars loss away from working. And then they just kept going downhill until it downhill to Matt Ryan, downhill to Sam Ehlinger. And that was such a disastrous move that it literally got him fired. But he, like you said, he made it work to, I think, the best of his ability. He also was really adaptive with when he had Phillip Rivers, who wasn't elite, but was still good. We saw them passing more, playing with more pace. And then when he got into the Carson Wentz era, he did coincidentally also get in the Jonathan Taylor era, and he leaned into that. So I think he was reasonably adaptive to working with what he had, although you have to blame him to some extent for the quarterbacks he got. Like, I imagine he was in some way involved. It might not have been his choice alone. We know it wasn't. We know Irsay is pretty involved in these things, but like, I'm sure if he had said like, hey, I can't make Carson Wentz work, he is broken, they probably wouldn't have traded for him. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in Carolina, because there's a giant void at quarterback. So I have no clue how that plays out. But yeah, like you said, as far as guys who have, quote, failed before, I have no problem with this.
Denny or Reeves? Reeves, you claimed you had no opinion on the matter. Is that actually true? Do you just have no opinion on it at all?
I mean, I'm fine with it. It's one of these things, like if you're going to hire a head coach now, I mean, just look at all the teams that made the playoffs and look at the teams that are left. Like, you've got to almost go offense at this age. You want almost your head coach to not be able to be a play caller, so your play caller can't get poached and elevated to a new job. It's just kind of the era we're in the NFL. I will say this about the Panthers, though. I think it's a good job for Frank Reich to take, because when you look at that division, it's a division that probably all 4 teams could have new quarterbacks next year. It's definitely, the rebound for the Carolina Panthers is probably shorter than like a lot of other jobs he could have taken. It all obviously depends on like what kind of quarterback it plays, but that division is going to have a ton of turnover this year anyways.
I hadn't thought about that. That's absolutely true. 4 new quarterbacks, almost certainly. I wonder how many times that's happened in this divisional area with the 4-team divisions. Probably very, very infrequently. Denny, do you have a Frank Reich take, or if we milk this cow?
Yeah, I'll force one here. It could be good for DJ Moore if Frank Reich can get the quarterback situation worked out and get the offense a little more adaptable to the modern age. I know that they got by with like a massively run heavy scheme to end the season. That's not a long-term plan. Let's just be honest. So and DJ Moore, everything about his peripherals says that he's elite. So I'm hoping that we finally might get our lovely DJ Moore.
Just like I'll never believe Brock Purdy's good, I'll never believe DJ Moore is bad.
Oh, he's good.
He actually is really, really good. And man, yeah, it's gonna be really funny when the Panthers get Aaron Rodgers and not the Jets. By the way, the Jets on the Jets. That was the other news on Thursday. The Jets they're keeping Broncos country riding just further and further into the desert. Until they ride one day into the canyon. It's too dark. Broncos country will ride forever in the hearts of New York Jets fans for 1 year after everyone gets fired next year. Because I think the Jets, I feel like, just basically like signed like their death warrant as an offense, unless they get Aaron Rodgers.
Well, I mean, Hackett's a way better coordinator than he is head coach. Like I think.
Yeah, I mean, is he?
Yeah,
there's no way he's a worse coordinator than.
I know he's never been a good. He was not a good coordinator for the Bills or the Jaguars. I don't think he called plays for the Packers. Pretty sure that was LaFleur, right?
I think he was just Aaron Rodgers' friend.
Yeah, he was like, was he even the coordinator or was he the quarterbacks coach for the Packers?
I think he was passing game specialist or something.
I think he was the offensive coordinator.
He was, I think, technically offensive coordinator, but
he was the coordinator, and Otten, how do you ever say that one? Was the passing game coordinator, or maybe he's a run game coordinator.
Not a real person.
I think Denny's maybe onto like a shred of truth in that so much of this team was like high level dysfunction. I don't think I mean, they also were pretty vanilla weak schematically, but they were, I think, meh schematically and functionally a complete train wreck. Like there were reports of Russell Wilson not knowing what audibles to call at the line. He was still using Seattle calls. They were like, they led the league in every single category of penalty on offense. They had like terrible clock management. Those are things that you can maybe corral with the other coaches around him, both above him at the head coach level and below him at like position coach levels. Now, do I think like it's a particularly smart hire? No, but I don't.
This guy was overwhelmed in the media market of Denver. And now he's going to here can be a bit of a tough crowd,
but he's not the head guy. That's the important part.
He's going to be treated like the head guy because he's going to be like the new guy, and he's going to be the fall guy.
We're not going to talk about him at all. Like Robert Saleh is there to take all the bullets from the media, and Hackett. We won't even talk about Hackett. He's a non-issue.
Also, things might smooth over if they get an actual quarterback. This team has talent at receiver. Like they are well coached at the head coach level. I think like they could just like we could forget about, and they could still maybe they still make all the false start penalties, like the false start penalties and the delay of game penalties. Don't even get me started on the delay of game penalties. They could still make those, but if they get Aaron Rodgers and he's back to prime Aaron Rodgers, whether or not it's Hackett's doing, we will give him enough credit, or at least ignore him. We'll ignore him, like Denny said.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But interesting coach goings-ons on Thursday. Is it goings-on or is it goings-ons, Denny? I can't ever remember.
It's goings-ons.
I hit Denny with an unawares on the phone earlier. So
yeah, man. I thought I was talking to a 75-year-old.
I've been crossover dribbling today. We will finally get into conference championship weekend. The Eagles were the best team in the NFC all season, but we'll be encountering the hottest team in football at home for the NFC Championship game. The Niners arrive in town as modest 2-point underdogs, Rich Hribar. I'm just going to begin with what has become our $1 million weekly question on this show. Rich, can Brock Purdy keep getting away with this?
I mean, listen, this is the same thing. You almost missed a great segue from LaFleur's offense that he fell on that sword, for the Jets collapse, even though he had the quarterbacks that couldn't push the easy buttons he was creating. And Brock Purdy has really kind of hit all of those easy buttons that this system, provides quarterbacks with. But we did see a little bit last week. They faced their first like real defense, and I say real almost like hesitance because the Cowboys coming into last week's game like really hadn't played their best football over the final third of the season when their cornerback room got kind of, shellacked through injuries. But we saw the 49ers, they were at 4.9 yards per play last week. That was their fewest in a game that Purdy started. They had just 3 games this season with fewer yards per play. Of the 4 teams that won, they were dead last in third down conversion rate last week, lowest in red zone rate, lowest in yards per play. And it really just comes down to, them facing another team that's really capable of getting after the quarterback. They faced the team that was number 1 in the NFL in pressure rate last week, the Cowboys, and they did pressure him on 49% of his dropbacks. Was the highest rate of any quarterback was pressured last weekend in the playoffs. But the Eagles are really good at converting their pressures into negative plays, which the Cowboys aren't. The Cowboys
70 sacks this season, 15 more than any other team.
Yeah, Cowboys first in the NFL in pressure rate, but 15th in the NFL in turning pressures into sacks. The Eagles are number 1 in the NFL. They're second in the NFL in pressure rate overall and number 1 in turning pressures into sacks. Cowboys had chances to make negative plays for the 49ers offense off of those pressures. They only had 2 sacks on those 16 pressures. They missed multiple interception chances. If those plays turn into negative plays, for the 49ers offense, the Eagles, it's going to be a tough spot for the 49ers. We haven't seen Purdy have to punch and pass his way back, from a deficit at all at any point. But when he's been kept clean, he's been amazing. Like, even last week, 15-17 when the Cowboys didn't get pressure on him. Only Patrick Mahomes is a higher passer rating of all quarterbacks with 100 more attempts when he's not pressured. And it's not a Purdy. This is the offense. As I said, the easy buttons that you're forced to click. That's what he's able to do. Just play good point guard. And that's what the Jets weren't able to do. And Mike LaFleur took the heat for that, and you have Mike White and Zach Wilson and Joe Flacco. So yeah, this is going to be a great game though, I think, because both defenses are really good and both offenses are really versatile in terms of what they can do personnel wise. We can get into the Eagles stuff too, but I'm very excited to see kind of how both these teams go about approaching both defenses, because they're both really, really good defenses.
Yeah. Another thing about Purdy, he's been great without pressure. He hasn't been terrible under pressure. He since he took over as starter in San Francisco, he has a 7.4 yards per attempt when facing pressure. That's the 7th highest rate in the league. He's thrown 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions when pressured. His completion rate is 50%, so that's not great. But and I do think there is a little bit of getting away with it going on with Purdy. I think, per the film, he probably should have 2 to 3 interceptions over the past 2 weeks that were dropped by defenders. But, again, not terrible. So if the Eagles go after him, I don't think that's like automatically a terrible thing for the Niners.
You're just kind of building off what Rich said, where he faced by far his stiffest test of his starting stint last week in a Cowboys defense that did have a good game and kept their bad offense in the game. The Cowboys offense malfunctioning the entire game against an elite defense. And yeah, Purdy, it's not like it was an amazing start, but it was just the classic. He did what he needed to do. The turnovers thing, he is getting away with the turnovers. That's part of being an NFL quarterback. Patrick Mahomes gets dropped interceptions, but it does seem like it's been an abnormally lucky streak for Brock Purdy. But good players seem lucky and get lucky. And I keep joking.
Dak Prescott would love some of this. Good players that don't always get their passes intercepted stuff going on.
So I keep joking about not believing in him, and I still think he's probably ultimately going to be like a number 2 type. But it's hard. You literally can't argue with the results, which have been perfect and flawless from a win-loss perspective for his team. And I think we kind of talked about on the show, he's pushing the easy buttons that Rich referenced. But unlike Jimmy Garoppolo, his world doesn't immediately end when he's pressured, and he can improvise. We've talked a lot about his improvisation. And he's going to really, really need that against the Eagles because, this team gets after the quarterback. So from one stiff test to by far the stiffest test. But, at this point, I can only keep the bit going for so long. You have to be impressed with what Brock Purdy has done. But also still wondering, if it's going to hold up under the kind of test he's going to face this week. Any final Brock Purdy thoughts?
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if they end up the 49ers, as they like to do, run the football a lot more, because the Eagles are number 1 in dropback EPA. They're 24th in rush EPA. And not only are they not surprising, they're incredible at getting pressure and converting that into sacks. That makes you really good at defending the pass, but they're also really good against yards after the catch. They're top 5 in yards after the catch they're top among defenses. So they're very difficult to produce yards after the catch against. They're number 2 in PFF coverage grade, and they're number 3 in yards per catch allowed. And those are kind of hallmarks of what we kind of say is the easy buttons, is that you get receivers open, and because they have George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and Deebo Samuel, they do a lot of the heavy lifting after the catch. Eagles have not been susceptible to that. They have been susceptible just straight up to the ground game. And we know Shanahan does like to activate the ground game. And this is one where we oftentimes sort of say, well, the pass is going so well, why don't you just keep throwing it? We know it's more efficient. This is one where that will come closer to not being true. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of the backfield in this game.
So, Denny, that segues into what I was going to ask you is how do the 49ers win this game? And we just been talking about the Eagles, elite against the pass, far more vulnerable against the run. You do want to run against them, but then if you fall behind early, I mean, how do the 49ers win this game if they're going to win this game?
Yeah, I actually think that, and I touched on this on my DFS piece you can find on the site. I actually think that the Niners kind of have to let it rip, especially that middle of the field stuff, avoiding the shutdown corners, Slay and Bradbury for the Eagles. Philadelphia.
Just real quick, are you suggesting it was a bit on Galaxy Brains where you said you only wanted Brock Purdy to throw outside the numbers this week?
I've never. First of all, I want to be clear. I've never done a bit.
No, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's sorry. Philadelphia's run defense. I know that we see it as like the weak spot, but they've been really good over the past like month and a half, 2 months. So from week 1 to 10. Only the Browns had a higher rush EPA allowed than the Eagles, and no defense gave up a higher rushing success rate than Philadelphia. So they were just being run all over by everyone, even like the Texans at one point in that, I think it was a Thursday night game. Since the team added Linval Joseph to the line and made some adjustments in the way they approached the rush, the Eagles have allowed the 12th lowest EPA and the 8th lowest success rate from week 10 till now. So I actually think that they can slow down this Kyle Shanahan rushing attack and kind of force Brock Purdy to take control. And if the Niners don't trust Purdy to do that, and if they just keep hammering Mitchell and McCaffrey into the line over and over and over again, I don't think that works unless, of course, the Niners defense can shut down the Eagles and make it sort of a sloppy, low-scoring game.
Yeah, the Eagles, their run defense has been awesome since they acquired Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, especially when you remove the quarterback rushing element from what has gone into all those like EPA stuff and a lot of DVOA stuff, because they faced a slew of mobile quarterbacks end of the year. But without any of Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph, or Jordan Davis on the field, they've allowed 4.5 yards per carry to running backs, a 60% success rate. With any of those three on the field, just 3.9 yards per carry to running backs, a 66% success rate. Since week 11, when they got those guys, they've allowed a first down or touchdown on just 16% of running back carry. It's the lowest rate in the NFL. Whoa. So, I mean, they've been really good against the run, but their season-long stuff definitely looks bad. And this end of the season stretch where they've given up a lot of quarterback rushing yards has definitely inflated their overall rushing yardage that they've allowed too.
Sounds like maybe you guys are saying the Eagles should actually sell out to stop the run and bet on their personnel, their talent in the secondary to take care of the pass, like put the game on Brock Purdy's shoulders. Because, I mean, the other shoes, it's just got to drop. I mean, you can't keep getting away with this, right?
Which is why I think the middle of the field stuff with Deebo, with George Kittle, with, of course, McCaffrey, I think that's like where it's at for the Niners. Like that's their path to generating yards, consistent yards. I really don't think that they can just establish it against Philadelphia.
No, it's going to be very, like you said, just it's crazy the way Rich lined up, the way these teams have like similar strengths and just been basically colossi the entire second half of the season, both of them.
I mean, the Eagles have been literally the best team in the NFL. It felt like people got tired of them, but like
when he got hurt, when Jalen Hurts missed 3 games, it made it kind of easy to like fall asleep on them. But yeah, they were the last undefeated team in the NFL. They're the number 1 seed in their conference. They seem quite good. So, Kyle, we've talked a lot about what the 49ers might do since they're the underdog. I mean, they're a narrow underdog, though. 49ers defense enters. I said the 49ers were the hottest team in football. I mean, the offense has been part of that, obviously, but the defense is the big part of that. Like, so Rich mentioned how versatile the Eagles are on offense, something we've talked about all year, how they can win games more than one way. I mean, Who, if anyone, though, on the Eagles has a good matchup this week with the 49ers?
Yeah, good's like relative when you're playing at this high of a level. You're one of the final four teams. 49ers are top 2 in rush EPA and pass EPA. They don't have weaknesses. They have lesser strengths. But one of the spots they have a lesser strength is having no top 10 corners in PFF coverage here. They have 2 top 20 corners, which is to the point that like there's not the, oh, this is the easy way to beat them. There are hard ways to beat them, but you can do it. And conversely, the Eagles have A.J. Brown, the number 6 wide receiver in PFF's wide receiver grade, top 5 in yards per route run, and Devonta Smith, who's 16th in PFF wide receiver grade. So they definitely have at least an advantage matchup at receiver. And that's not saying the 49ers are bad at corner. It's saying that A.J. Brown is an absolute menace. Devonta Smith could be a number 1 receiver on a lot of other teams. So I think that's kind of the easy spot. And it's a spot that we've seen the Eagles go for before. When they have a matchup in the passing game, I know we think of them, or at least I think the public kind of thinks of them as they want to establish it. They just want to get the ground game going. They're the quarterback run team. When they get a chance or when it's advantageous for the football, this is something Pat Crane has harped on accurately all year. They will take those shots. They will ramp up the pass rate. They will try and attack their opponents how they're weakest. They're very multiple in that way. I think Nick Sirianni deserves a lot of credit for that. So I don't know if this is a game where we see Jalen Hurts drop back to throw bombs as much, but I do think a lot of quick stuff potentially to Dallas Goedert, potentially to this almost surprised me that A.J. Brown, for as much as we think of him as this big play threat, I think it's sort of like sneaky Jamar Chasian in this way, in that he is 4th in the NFL in yards after the catch per catch among tight ends or among wide receivers. He is also 3rd in total missed tackles forced. Like he can just win at every level. And he's so athletic that when you put him on corners who aren't as big, strong, and fast as him, he can also make yards after the catch and break tackles. So I think that's sort of their way to pass. And they probably do want to pass against this 49ers defense, is not as much the long shots, just launch the mortars out there. It's to let the receivers win this game.
Kyle, real quick, what is A.J. Brown's health status? I mean, I know there's like not concerned he's like missed the game, but like is he practicing?
He was not even on the injury report. It's we can only read into these things so much. Obviously, like you would also, even if he was very hurt, Nick Sirianni would be like, just don't put him on the injury report. As long as he's going to play, just don't say it. Yeah. But that's the best information we have to work with. And I will say he didn't even show up as like full practice, not even on the injury report to open the week. He essentially looked like he got rested towards the end of that Giants game while dealing with the hip issue. But if you're not even on the injury report, I've got to imagine you're as close to 100%, or Sirianni is doing a really sneaky good job. But like he could have done that at other times too. And we haven't seen such a glaring, I don't want to say it's like dirty, but it would be a little cheeky to just like straight up lie to our faces. So I'm going to say with the best information we have, pretty close to 100% as far as a player 20 weeks into an NFL season can be.
Yeah, that's a good point. By the way, before we get into the DFS discussion, Pat Crane, before he departed for Southeast Asia, also outed himself as a Purdy believer. So seems like we're slowly turning the corner on that one. I know. Rich shaking his head.
I thought he would stay with us.
I don't know what society's come to.
We'll stick a pin in it. I'm here for the chaos if anything happens, but it's literally this offense, the way it's structured. There's another ceiling that the 49ers have offensively, and if they were to just kick the can with Purdy here, like it would just be that. There's another gear this offense has with elevated quarterback play that we haven't seen, which is downright scary.
It is.
And that's why they took a guy like Trey Lance in the first place.
It's true. No, because, Kyle Shanahan, he's reached the limits of scheme. And the limits of scheme is you can get to a Super Bowl and almost win it with Jimmy Garoppolo. Like he's tired of having to rely so much on scheme. And that is why he made the big bet on Trey. I mean, this is a man who won an MVP with Matt Ryan. I mean, come on. It's amazing what he can do. The
49ers don't have like necessarily the top player at any position except for maybe Christian McCaffrey. But when you talk about like from the top down depth and versatility of their roster, that's by far the best offensive unit. And if you have elevated quarterback play with that, like quarterback play that can win on its own paired with that kind of talent, there's a whole nother scary gear that the league probably isn't prepared to deal with the 49ers. And they hope a guy like Brock Purdy's the starter.
Yeah. So but Trey Lance, if you're listening, get well soon, please. we're not ready
but
to move on.
That was never even the argument for Trey Lance. Wasn't like to defend Trey Lance. It was defending the possibility of Trey Lance, like the possibility of his ceiling and what it would mean.
The theory of Trey Lance.
It's very theoretical. This man has appeared in like 5 games since high school.
Right.
I'm going to do it again next summer. You think I'm joking here about the theory of Trey Lance? I will be preaching the theory again in 4 months.
Kyle, I am too. I'm going to go in on Trey Lance when he's the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans.
Oh, get out of here. Please. Just stop.
It's happening.
Just stop.
It's just, we have to just get used to the idea.
Please just stop. We haven't gotten to the most important part of this game yet, which is, of course, the DFS sicko plays. I'm going to put the floor to Rich everything's kind of sicko in a 2-game slate, but what is really catching your eye in DFS and 49ers Eagles, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Kyle. If the Eagles are going to have if there's going to be spike components to this game, which I think will be pretty limited, it'll come from the Eagles wide receivers. Obviously, it's going to have to be a big AJ Brown, Devontae Smith game. The 49ers have been pretty weak against wide receivers. It's interesting because where both these defenses are kind of vulnerable are inverse. Like the Eagles, you want to attack over the middle of the field. You want to try to get them to have linebackers on the field, which is cool because the 49ers can do that because they're going to play a fullback on the field, which the Eagles don't face. I mean, the Eagles face 21 personnel, the second fewest snaps in the NFL this season. That's going to change this Sunday. So you're going to be able to try to make their linebackers that don't play a lot. They'd rather have some extra DBs on the field, especially their versatile safeties. The 49ers may be able to find some opportunity there, but against the 49ers, you want to attack them on the outside and vertically. Like they have been one of the weaker teams against vertical wide receiver targets. They have allowed, they've allowed 6 touchdowns to wide receivers on throws 20 yards or further downfield. It's 27th in the NFL. They're 23rd in completion rate on those throws. And then since week 11, the only team worse against wide receivers overall than the 49ers have been the Cowboys, the team that they just beat. They're 28th in catch rate allowed to wide receivers. They're 24th in yards per target allowed to wide receivers, 29th in yards per game, 23rd in touchdown rate. So this is going to have to be a big, heavy lifting Arthur Juan, Devontae Smith game. If you do want a sicko play, this might be a week.
Say it. I know you say it.
A week to dust off Quez Watkins.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, 19.6% of his targets are on downfield targets, the highest rate on the team. Laid out against the 49ers. They're also way more vulnerable when to vertical plays out of the slot where Quez Watkins runs. He didn't have a high yards per catch this season, but if there was ever a week, it would be this week. And I think Quez Watkins last year almost had 100 yards on the 49ers, if I'm mistaken.
Let's see. I'll look it up. I'm on his game logs right now, Richard. But, he had 2 catches for 117 yards, one of which was a 91-yard non-touchdown.
Yes, I was actually about to recite the fact it was the longest. I think it was the longest completion. I know it was the longest non-touchdown catch of the year last year. I had that game with him.
How? 91-yard catch. He
got tracked out. He got like the corner or safety, whoever was coming after him, tracked him down like within 5 yards. Literally, there were only 9 yards to go max on an NFL field. But it was like 2 yards, and then the corner or safety got an angle on him and took him down like that.
That must have been a hell of an angle because Quez Watkins is pretty fast.
That guy was doing like trigonometry. He knew exactly the hypotenuse, and he was like, I know I can get him at the 2.
It's an all-time angle.
It's definitely probably a game similar to like the Cowboys game last week, where I think touchdowns are probably going to be a premium here. You're looking, if you can score, if one of these offenses can score 3 touchdowns in this game, they might auto win.
That's a really good point. And I was just really hoping someone would say Quez Watkins, who I had to double check wasn't hurt because I haven't heard his name in like 2 months.
Yeah. Well, Pascal played more last week because in the run game he's going to be out there blocking, man. Like that's
his final. Quez Watkins' final 4 games of the regular season, he had 7 catches for 39 yards. Has yet to record a catch in the playoffs, so he is not injured. And as Rich said, this would align. I was really hoping we would have someone say Quez Watkins in the DFS talk. The sickest name has been taken, Denny and Kyle, but you guys never disappoint. We got anything else crazy out there?
Yeah. We're getting sick. We're getting disgusting with Juwan Jennings.
I was figuring you were going to say Juwan Jennings or maybe even Kyle Juszczyk.
Yeah. Look, Jennings, runs. I'm trying to find the little thing I had on him. Let's see. Jennings runs about 60% of his routes from the slot, That's increased lately, 55%, sorry. He functions as somewhat of a downfield threat, 14.5 average depth of target since Brock Purdy took over under center for the Niners. And as we saw last week, and as I talked about almost obsessively on this show, I think I mentioned him 3 times. Richie James had a pretty good game last week, 7 catches on 10 targets for 50-some yards. He did, however, I don't know if you guys caught this one, but Richie James dropped a 75-yard touchdown.
He did.
That would have
Again, I've had to
generational wealth. Generational wealth. And
the bank has agreed to let my family keep our home at least until our 4th child is born.
Look, if I live another 40 to 50 years, I will eventually get over that drop by Richie James. But yeah, I mean, this is the way you go after this Eagles offense. I'm not saying that Juwan Jennings is going to see 8-10 targets, of course not. But him and Debo, I think, are going to be more in the middle of the field, and of course Kittle. Then Ayuk. I think it's a horrific matchup, obviously, for Brandon Ayuk. And hey, on a 2-game slate, that might push enough rostership away from him to make him playable. It's a kind of a thing you have to measure. But Jennings is my sicko play.
Kyle, I'll put you on the spot and say who's the non-sicko play that you just have to hammer in this game? Who do you have to pay up for in this game?
I don't know. I guess I don't know if you have to pay up for Christian McCaffrey. I was thinking that, especially with people maybe afraid of the Chiefs, like you think of most games where it's like, or most 2-game slates or 3-game, Thanksgiving, or when we get like the double Saturdays late in the season or whatever, we see the best offense just get absolutely steamed like crazy. This is maybe the one scenario we have to avoid Patrick Mahomes at 60% rostership and drop him to 40, and that might be less than optimal. Like we might be pushing in the correct direction. So to me, it's not that you have to pay up, but at least a modest value that I don't mind going to will be Eli Mitchell. I believe he outcarried Christian McCaffrey last week. They still use McCaffrey in the much more high leverage situations. You are
is McCaffrey like battling something? It's kind of
he was DNP with the calf strain to open the week. I mean, he's fine. The 49ers have actually been pretty prudent about giving.
They were taking him off the field and like everything but third downs last weekend.
He will play, I guess, is what I meant when I said he's fine. I definitely don't know. He's probably not at 100%. Like you said, they were giving him the heat pack on the calf on the sidelines and taking him out for stretches of plays. And for that reason, Elijah Mitchell also didn't practice, but neither did Debo. Like they're resting their guys. But for that reason, I don't think we get McCaffrey like peak Carolina numbers, 97% snap share, every single target. Like he will get the high leverage stuff. If you play Elijah Mitchell, you are banking on either like the DeAndre Swift special, long run to the 5, gets subbed out, Eli Mitchell comes in. That's certainly possible. They will be subbing him out more than the Panthers would have in week 6 or whatever. So as far as like value plays go, I think he's a pretty solid option because his team should be able to put up a decent amount of points. They've been extremely efficient to close the year, even if this is a difficult matchup. He could fall in the end zone, and he himself has been very efficient. So I think it's a thin play. It's a non-existent play on a slate with 10 games. We're not talking about that. And if getting down to Elijah Mitchell and he gets 12 points because he gets in the end zone is what you need, a la like Kenneth Gainwell or Samaje Perine. They don't have to go for 20. It's a 2-game slate. They can go for 12, and that could be enough to get a Travis Kelce Mahomes stack in that you otherwise would not have been able to afford.
By the way, Denny, he just said Samaje Perine correctly after I goaded you into an incorrect pronunciation on Galaxy.
Oh, is that it? Did I say it right? Because I've been yelled at no matter what I've said about saying it wrong.
You said it right. Okay. And I made Denny say it wrong on Galaxy.
You know what? You're a classic overthinker when it comes to names.
I am. I really am. Yeah,
you put way too much thought in the name.
I was shaking when I had to say Inna Sheeran for my Oscars joke.
You just gotta go from the hip, man. It does,
that's true. Go with what feels right.
You see a name, you just say it.
We'll go with what feels right in the AFC Championship game right after this. Just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands this weekend by predicting what will happen on the PGA Tour as well as in college basketball. And also, don't forget, download the Rotoworld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It is available in your app store today. Hosting their 5th straight AFC Championship game, the Chiefs find themselves in a near pick'em situation with the Bengals as the world waits for Patrick Mahomes news on Patrick Mahomes' health. It was a pick'em. Then we got Patrick Mahomes practicing in full. Now the Chiefs are back to 1-point favorites. still as narrow as it gets at home in a playoff game, though. And so, yeah, we got the most compelling update we're going to get all week on Mahomes when he's practicing in full, because what could be better news than that, Denny? But we know his ankle is still going to be the biggest question mark in this contest. I'll just start by asking, who do you think should be considered the favorite in this game? And if you want Denny's thoughts, by the way, on what constitutes like when we could be satisfied with news on Mahomes' health, listen to Galaxy Brains this week. We lay out what would actually convince us that he's healthy. But yeah, Denny, who is the favorite in the AFC Championship game? My goodness.
I think the Bengals deserve to be seen as the favorite here because of Mahomes' injury. It will make him less mobile. I know that everything seems fine. He's walking around, he's jogging around, but part of his superpower is being sneaky mobile and getting out of the pocket and making throws no one else can make. If he doesn't have that against a Bengals defense that has severely limited him, including in their Week 13 matchup against Chiefs,
three straight losses for the Chiefs.
And that's Mahomes, right? And that's Mahomes at full health in Week 13. So I think that the Bengals defense doesn't do any one thing spectacularly, but they do everything pretty well. And I think that they are in position to limit this Kansas City offense, especially with the injury. Another thing that I think makes the Bengals just so dangerous, like we saw last week against the Bills, is Joe Burrow's willingness to just be patient, to just kind of matriculate the ball down the field. And against, an enormous amount of too high safety coverage, he sees more than anybody else. And it doesn't matter. He's patient. He dinks, he dunks, he checks down. Josh Allen, not so much. Josh Allen's not patient. He's not a patient guy. He sees a lot of the same coverage. He makes mistakes against it. Joe Burrow doesn't make those mistakes. So I do think the Bengals should be seen as favorites.
Yeah, that's kind of sad. Everything you said struck me as accurate there, Denny. And you talk about the Bengals not being like truly elite at any one facet, even though you weren't saying they were not a good defense. They're a very good defense. They're so elite, at game planning and adjusting.
Yeah.
And as we know, the famous second half adjustment in the AFC Championship game last year against the Chiefs, where they just totally shut the Chiefs offense down in the second half. So Lou Anarumo is going to have some surprises for Patrick Mahomes. We're going to talk more about the Bengals in the season, but we'll stay on the Chiefs offense, Richard, where I'm finally glad to have a new voice in here, because every week we ask Pat Crane if it's going to be Tony's season. And every week he just says no. He's always like, he ran like 8 routes last week. Right. Can you stop asking me this? And then he just goes to Asia because he's tired of us asking him about Kadarius Toney. So is it Tony season finally, Rich?
Probably not.
Yeah, that is the correct answer. It's always been the correct answer.
Yeah, I mean,
19 straight weeks.
This is an interesting game in totality because there's no way Lou Anarumo is going to let Travis Kelce get 17 targets. There's just absolutely no damn way that's going to happen. They're going to have to make some of these other Chiefs got ancillary pieces do something, and they really have not done much of anything. But if Mahomes is going to have to rely on the quick game because they're worried about the ankle, they're trying to get the ball out, that would favor Tony the most of these guys. But really,
thank you.
But
we can wrap it up then.
Yeah, let's go on to the next subject.
So the Chiefs have targeted their wide receivers just 48% of the time. Only the Ravens have targeted their wide receivers at a lower rate. Both teams have elite tight ends, obviously, that impacts those things. But the Chiefs haven't had a 100-yard wide receiver since week 7. Over their past 11 games, their wide receivers have combined for 7 receiving touchdowns. You look at a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster. He had 3 or fewer receptions in 7 of his past 9 games. Because the Chiefs have been playing a lot more 2 tight ends, it's made Smith-Schuster have to play more outside, which we know historically, and it has been true again this year. He's just not as effective receiver playing outside than inside.
They should just convert Juju to tight end officially, by the way.
The ghost of MVS is out there. He had 2 targets last week. He did have the 1 touchdown. Justin Watson's the ultimate cardio guy. The dude's been targeted on 11% of his routes, but he was 3rd on the team in routes run. Tony at least is getting the ball when he's in the game. That at least helps. We know if he's in there, he's probably in there to get the ball. And 40% of his targets have come behind the line of scrimmage. So if there is a quick game, there it is, to him. And I don't mind anyone taking a shot on a player that's as talented as Tony is. If you're saying like, all right, on DraftKings, he's 3,700, I'm just going to play him, but he is going to be really popular play at that salary. And inversely, he's like the same price as Tyler Boyd, who I like the matchup a lot more, and he's going to be on the field a lot more. I would rather
he plays
him.
Football on Sunday. You'll see him playing
You'll
football,
see him in
which
the
is a
game.
major difference.
But there's just no way Lou Anarumo is going to let Travis Kelce have 50% of the team targets again.
Right.
There's absolutely no way. When these teams played in week 13, Travis Kelce had 14% of the team air yards. It was the second lowest rate in a game this season. He had a depth of target of just 5 yards downfield, the second lowest in a game this season. They are going to make these other guys beat them. It hasn't been a problem, the trade of Tyreek Hill this season. Mahomes led the league in touchdowns, led the league in passing yards. But now that everything is against the fire here, this is a spot where you really wish you had someone besides Travis Kelce that can contribute.
I want to say about Kadarius Toney, because obviously we're paid handsomely to defend Kadarius Toney on this show. All right, the guy ran 12 routes last week, which that's not my favorite stat to recite. I don't like it. He was targeted 6 times, 50% rate. Okay,
as many targets as all the other receivers combined.
Now, I said that on Twitter, and the response was, well, the plays were designed for him. And my response would be,
cool.
That I think that happens with good players. Yes. I don't know. I tend to see plays designed for good players. So I think that we're on to something with Toney on a short slate. Rich is right. He's going to have crazy rostership. And Tyler Boyd is boring as hell, but man, I hate that you're right about that, but you're right. Tyler Boyd is a better play than Kadarius Toney. I said it.
I think you're both right, though. Where Rich made a point that I've kind of made a few times where, so they didn't miss Patrick Mahomes, but that's during the course of a 17-game season where you're going to be playing a lot of inferior teams. You can just scheme up the bad guys. You can basically make do when you have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. But in these much more mano-a-mano games where you're playing a team that's as good as you, that is when it shows up. And it's like, it turns into like a classic, like regular season roster versus a postseason roster where you need playmakers. We know Andy Reid is acutely aware that no one is making plays behind Travis Kelce. And we know he's seeing the same things we're seeing. Like every time Kadarius Toney gets the ball, he's basically breaking a tackle and getting the edge, and then often breaking a tackle out on the edge. And at some point he's going to get more work, and they need him badly. I mean, he did getting designed, manufactured 6 touches is a pretty big deal. And
I will say,
I don't think he's like a total sucker's play. I'll say that.
Well, we also could get Mecole Hardman back as of Wednesday. He was limited in practice. He didn't practice last week. Came back to practice. Then Andy Reid said that he feels better than he has in the previous few weeks. No guarantee that he plays, but given how little they use Toney, like if they cut his routes in half, he plays 3 snaps. Like he just will not be on the field. I also don't think
the game though.
Yeah, I don't know how much we see Mecole either, though, because he's coming back from a relatively extended absence.
Oh, and they also have said 5 times he's coming back, and then he practices one time, and he's not coming back.
By the way, yeah. So here's my thought process on what you're saying about Hardman, and you're right, Kyle, of course. But if Hardman's active, that's okay. Well, we're off Toney. But if everybody's off Toney, then we're on Toney.
I'm in. In this case, I'm in. I'll play if that gets pub. I will totally play Toney at 8% on a 2-game slate. But that is conditional.
A fully healthy Hardman during the regular season had me very concerned about Jerick McKinnon because they're actually competing for a lot of the same touches, I think. But at this point, Hardman's health has become such a saga. It's hard to see him doing anything other than playing a few snaps if he's active. And I don't think it'll really be hurting anybody per se.
Which again, a few snaps would be as many as Kadarius Toney.
That's the problem if Hardman plays, is they're already rotating these guys around. Like they're not even playing anybody really full time anymore, even Juju. So you just add another player to rotate in. It's just and Mahomes told us it was going to be this way before the season.
He
did tell us.
He did come out.
We didn't believe him, but this is where we are. These wide receivers, because I have all this mountains of data I can look at, all these things, and I couldn't tell you what Chiefs wide receiver play. I honestly don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't have an answer.
That's very fair. And imagine if Juju Smith-Schuster were good. Wouldn't that be cool?
Mm-hmm.
That would be really, really cool.
Can you just not do that next offseason?
They got it. Yeah, they got to get themselves a receiver.
No,
Although
I'm talking about you, Pat. You talked up Juju.
A lot of people labeled him the Cooper Cup of this year.
I was not one of those.
No, Pat didn't say that. Didn't say it. But I think Kyle and I were pointing out that he hasn't been good in 7 years.
It's true, but I mean, I was just connecting the rather obvious dots. Well, he's gonna play the most snaps for the best quarterback in the NFL. I'm like, he's probably going to be kind of good in fantasy. And then he kind of was in between injuries. And then, as Rich said, the second half of the season, there's like that one.
There was a brief moment in time in which like it looked like we may be getting something. Then he had that pretty brutal concussion the first time he played the Jags. Yeah. And maybe that sort of threw off whatever rhythm he had. But like really, this is a very good example of like running backs. Like, yeah, we can very freely chase opportunity because talent gets a lot lost in the mix on how that actually shows up in like getting yards and getting points. Receiver, not as much. You can play just ask Juju, Justin Watson, MVS. Like you can get a lot of snaps and just not get open and not get the ball. These guys are prime examples of it. And they play with Patrick Mahomes. Yeah,
I criticize Pat for the Juju take while I happily drafted Gabe Davis in the third round of 12-team leagues.
Thankfully, I did both.
I'm not saying the Chiefs are going to lose this game, but if they were to lose this game, it would literally fit into the exact umbrella that we've been talking about why every team has lost so far these last couple weeks in the playoffs. When Dallas lost, it was like, well, they couldn't get anyone to do anything outside of CeeDee Lamb. When the Bills lost, it was they need to add more. They don't have enough outside of Stephon Diggs. If the Chiefs lose this game, it's going to come back to the trade of Tyreek Hill and them not having anyone that can contribute outside of Travis Kelce.
We talked about it with the Chargers too. Like Mike Williams has been terrible at generating separation this year. Keenan Allen is aging. They're another team that like they're probably not as down bad at receiver as the teams you just mentioned, but like they probably could have used some more receiving talent, especially to make the most of Justin Herbert's cannon. So I think that's totally that's going to be talked to death. You've already foreshadowed what is going to be talked to death in like as soon as we flip to the draft season.
I mean, Lou Anarumo is just too damn smart, man. Like, there's no way he's going to let Travis Kelce get 17 targets. There's no way.
Quite literally zero way. Kyle, we've talked a lot about what the Chiefs maybe need to do or might do. How do the Bengals win this game? I mean, other than like Joe Burrow being awesome, like what is like the official Bengals game plan against the Chiefs?
I mean, I think it looks probably somewhat similar to what they did last week in that all year, Joe Burrow has been great. I mean, he's good at kind of throwing at all parts of the field and at all sort of different rhythms, but he had a top 5 in terms of quickest, a top 5 fastest time to throw. He was one of the best quarterbacks when throwing in under 2.5 seconds. And despite being already top 5 in that metric, he was actually throwing the ball faster, getting it out faster against the Bills. And that makes so much sense when you reckon that even though the Bills without Von Miller had a weaker pass rush, it wasn't terrible. And most importantly, the Bengals were down, I think, at least 3 from the start of the year, starting offensive linemen. They're playing players out of position, players who had been healthy scratched throughout the year, Jackson Carman. And those guys, they did play well, but they were also greatly helped out by the scheme, which was get the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands fast. He's extremely accurate when throwing quickly, and he has incredible receiving talent. Ja'Marr Chase has been elite both in totality, but he's been really good at yards after the catch as well. He actually ranks 8th in yards after the catch over expected, and Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins are both positive in that metric as well, operating at very different portions of the field. So that's got to be at least part of the plan, is throw the ball as quickly as possible to your extreme receiving talent and let them do a lot of the work. And Ja'Marr Chase, to an extent, has been one of the better receivers against man coverage. Chiefs play a lot of man coverage. So it should work out well as far as things go for a team that is starting a pretty atrocious offensive line. They at least have really strong outs.
Jonah Williams still not practicing, by the way, the Bengals regular left tackle, but didn't really have that good of a season. As you alluded to, Jackson Carman was surprisingly good in the divisional round.
It looks like Cap is going to play.
It does. It is weird. It is weird. The line held up much better than expected last week, but that doesn't magically mean it's going to be a strength against the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. And could just be a weakness waiting to be exposed. Denny, we've already hit on a lot of these points, but yeah, to put like a fine point on it, what do the Chiefs need to do to stop their 3-game losing streak against this Bengals team? 2 of those were like very notable regular season losses the past 2 years. And one, of course, was the infamous AFC Championship game loss where they left points on the field in the first half and then bled away a lead in the second half.
They have to be super patient and just take what the Bengals give them. The Bengals are going to refuse both of these teams. Here's the thing. Both these defenses are going to refuse to let anything happen down the field. And that makes me sad as someone who would like to see some downfield excitement in this game with, especially with Ja'Marr Chase. But I don't think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see a lot of check down stuff. Ja'Marr Chase is, excellent with that involvement. Getting back to the Chiefs. So there will have to be a lot of short area stuff. And like Rich said, it cannot be all to Kelce. Like this Bengals defense is too well coached and the personnel is too good to just say, okay, well, a lot of short area stuff means 15 targets for Kelce. I don't see that happening. So, Juju stepping up, Tony Hardman.
Is McKinnon an autoplay? Do we just have to play McKinnon?
No, I don't think so. I mean, he was targetless last week.
That was very disappointing.
Disappointing. He was mostly in there as a personal protector for Mahomes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was very disappointing. I mean, he's still running. I think he ran an okay route rate. But yeah, I don't think that he's an autoplay. I do think that like hammering Pacheco might be, in line here with what the Chiefs need to do against the Bengals. Now that assumes that the Chiefs are going to be in like neutral or positive game script. And again, they never run. So like they're like the ultimate like pass rate over expected team. And they just keep passing. I don't know how much the injury plays into this, but I could see, lots of short area stuff. Maybe more Pacheco than usual.
Probably going to have to be. Rich, do you have anything to add on what you think either the Chiefs or the Bengals have to do on offense in this game?
Yeah, I mean the Chiefs, it just simply comes down to can they get to Burrow. No defense has been more sensitive to pressuring the quarterback this season than the Kansas City Chiefs. When they pressure the quarterback, they're sixth in the NFL in allowing a 42.4 completion rate. They've allowed a league low 3.6 yards per pass attempt. When the Chiefs don't get pressure on the opposing quarterback, they've allowed a league high 74.7% completion rate, 7.8 yards per pass attempt. That's 24th, and a 5.5% touchdown rate. That's 30th. In the three matchups between these teams over the past 14 months, they only sacked Burrow once in each of the last two games. When they haven't pressured Burrow's completed 75% of his passes, 9.1 yards per pass attempt, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. When these teams played in week 13, they only pressured Burrow on 22% of his dropbacks. It was the lowest rate the Chiefs pressured any quarterback outside of Tom Brady, who they only pressured 17% of the time, and nobody pressures Tom Brady because he's getting rid of the damn football.
Don't tell that to Tom Brady, who acts like he's under siege.
Yeah, well, he does. He's going to let you know. But Kyle kind of hit upon, like, the Bengals have long calibrated. Like, you'd rather have all these offensive linemen out there. You'd just rather have your better players out there. But the way teams structurally defended the Bengals over the course of this season with all the too high looks that they've seen kind of forced Zach Taylor to kind of calibrate this offense into kind of a quick passing game inherently. So I never believed all those linemen being out last week was going to be like a huge thing because Burrow already was getting rid of the ball so damn fast. It didn't matter. You weren't going to have time to get to him. And that's what happened last week. It's going to be something similar, I think, this week. They're just going to be able to get rid of the ball too fast. But the Chiefs have to find a way. It's imperative that they get more pressure than they got week 13 on him.
Those stats that you shared about the Chiefs when they generate pressure versus when they don't, it sounds like the opposing quarterback's basically just throwing against air.
Just Jesus. Absolutely like 1985 Dan Marino, whatever you want to do.
It seems very, very concerning. Gonna need to.
And from a fantasy stance, like it hasn't been a no contest in these games. Burrow scored more points than Mahomes in all three head-to-head matchups in these games. He's had 2 30-point games in these games. In the week 13 matchup, the Bengals had a drop touchdown pass by Tyler Boyd. And I know, like, you can point to the Chiefs will say Travis Kelce fumbled and that lost the game, but Tyler Boyd dropped a touchdown and they went for a 4th and 1 inside the Chiefs 5 and didn't get it. So like that game could have been like the Bengals had a lot of answers in that game, and no team has scored more points per drive against the Chiefs over the past 2 years than the Bengals have. They just have not had a lot of answers for the Bengals offense.
It sounds like there's no reason whatsoever the Chiefs should be favored.
Oh no, man! They got the best player in football still, man.
I was gonna say like the gap. I mean, obviously we have no clue what Mahomes' health is. He's practicing full. you would also want your opponent to believe you have full Patrick Mahomes. So, like, I don't want to again you can lend even less credence.
I think to be honest, you'd rather your opponent think they're going to get really limited Mahomes. They shouldn't have they should have had him not practice.
I think you just want whatever is the actual case, it to be the opposite. You just don't want them to come in prepared for what is reality. But with that being said, you have to take this with a grain of salt because we don't know what we're getting from Mahomes. The gap between him and EPA per play and the number 2 player was the same as the gap between 2 and 9. He this year and in most years is his own tier. Like they're just, in terms of the advanced metrics, are not quarterbacks as good as him in the NFL right now. So that's why the Chiefs are favorites, because Vegas thinks we are getting a good approximation of Mahomes. Are we? I don't know. I kind of think so. I really don't know. But that's why they're favored. They have the best player in football. And like in terms of like raw talent, like he's going to go down as one of the greatest. Like he's that good.
In the second half last week, he led all quarterbacks in EPA per play and rating playing on one leg, because while Mahomes, he has that, his apex is he can do so many things off platform and off structure that other guys can't do. He also still really good regular quarterback.
Yeah. He's just he's a freak. We love him. And
you can't. Here's the thing. When I said the Bengals should be fair, I'm not saying that Mahomes is bad.
That's what we heard.
But they do have a better roster. Like they have a better roster than the Chiefs.
I want to be on the record as saying Mahomes, in my estimation, is the greatest quarterback of all time. It's not close.
Would you guys say the Patrick Mahomes is him?
I'd say he's Timothy.
Yeah, he is. Because Joe Burrow was claiming that
I have a 17-year-old son. I deal with this shit all the time.
Get him in here.
Every time he scores a touchdown on you in Madden, he says he's him.
There's so many people that are him now that how can anyone be him or them? Like the people that are them and him are the non-hims.
How's your son doing, by the way? He's a Giants fan. Was he? How did he do with that rug pull?
He was good. Two drives in, he said, "Yeah, this is going to be it."
this isn't him.
He looked at Daniel. Yeah, I was gonna say, look, Daniel Jones. I know him when I see him, and him ain't him.
Yeah, does your son think Daniel Jones is him?
No, he doesn't even want them to extend him. But
okay, good.
No, that's a stark departure from the last time I talked with your son.
Yeah,
he thought Daniel Jones was the truth.
Yeah.
Speaking of the truth, we're almost out of time. But who's the truth in DFS in this game? Who's the Juwan Jennings? Who's the Quez Watkins? Who is making us retch in this game as we play them?
Rich said Tyler Boyd, and that's
correct.
The
good one. He got the good one.
That's correct. He's going to be on the field a lot. There's going to be a lot of short passing here. Burrow had a low ADOT when they faced them in week 13. Boyd should have had a touchdown in that game. Like if I remember correctly, it was a horrific touchdown drop.
It was one of the worst of the season.
Yeah. So
it was one of those ones where it was so easy. He definitely was thinking about it on the way. Like
yeah.
That's right. So I actually after this conversation, I feel like I'm going to have 100% exposure to Tyler Boyd.
There you go.
So here's a strategy Pat Crane and I used on our DFS show as we answered questions, and just whoever people were asking questions about, like, oh, that guy's going to come in lower owned than any projection site thinks. Everyone's like, oh, should I really be playing DeAndre Swift this week or whatever? Like, we'd be like, oh, people are terrified of DeAndre Swift. Roto, Pat, Denny, Rich, in that order, who are you playing at quarterback? Because if this is the Mahomes poll, who are you playing?
Who am I going to play this weekend?
If I had to choose one, I'm choosing Hurts.
I said I'm gonna do Mahomes or Hurts. I'm not gonna fall in the Purdy trap. Burrow, just like I can't galaxy brain. Everything I do will be galaxy brain based. I'm probably gonna end up going with Mahomes, just assuming people are terrified of playing him. And as we discussed, he is the best football player on the entire planet Earth. So,
Rich,
I'm playing Burrow for sure.
You guys all chose different ones. There's no. All right, I'm playing Purdy.
I say play Purdy. Yeah. It is interesting. There's like a pretty fascinating case, if you like, to be made for all four of them.
Hey, a Niners mega stack is fun. I've toyed around with that, and you have what do you have? You have Purdy, Kittle, Juwan Jennings.
And then you do a run back with Quez Watkins
and Debo.
DraftKings hasn't changed Debo's price for since week 7. He's been like
Debo's
sub 6K.
So. I mean, DraftKings pricing is super soft. Like Dallas Goedert is 4,100.
Yeah, it's on FanDuel. It's almost impossible to play Kelsey. It's so hard to play Kelsey on FanDuel. It's so hard to build an effective line. He's the same price as Jamar Chase.
Wow.
Wow.
It's so hard to log into FanDuel. It's weird how
Yes,
they've added that
we
to
don't know
the
if their
website.
contests will run either.
Come on, man. No Samaje Perine love, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I was going to bring him up, but I thought maybe we could attack
bring
the
him up.
quarterback
Bring him up.
position.
Well,
yeah, he was on the field.
The 2-minute drill drive, snaps, things of that nature.
I knew you
ran
guys...
like 18 routes on 39 Burrow dropbacks, I believe. He was on the field for over half. He pass blocks a little, which is to be expected, but like it's another like Eli Mitchell play. I don't think you're ever capturing a 100-yard game on the ground with either of those guys. But like Rich said, like it is hard to get up to Kelsey plus Mahomes or Hurts, and then AJ Brown also expensive. CMC, you want to play him? Like I could even play both 49ers running backs because you're not playing at either Samaje Perine or Elijah Mitchell because you think you're getting a 30 burger. You think the only way to build the rest of the best plays is with this meh running back play. So yeah, I could do some Perine.
Perine saw 8 targets, and of course Mixon was out for the Week 13 game against Kansas City, but he saw 8 targets. So maybe that speaks highly of Mixon because obviously Mixon is going to mix in as the lead back here.
Mick, hey, no pun intended.
I just realized what I said.
I think Rich made a pretty good point with Burrow. The more I think he's of the 4 quarterbacks, he's the one who like needs the least to happen for like his ceiling day to come true. Like he has the fewest variables. I say about the man playing with a left tackle, making a second career appearance at left tackle. But I feel like
all three of the non-Purdy guys are gonna be like 25% plus though. It's just the way it's gonna shake out. I mean, the stuff I'm looking at, it's granted it's only Thursday, so you can keep an eye on those things. But I mean, all 3 of those guys are projecting for 25 plus ownership.
So it's 49ers mega stacks the only choice basically. Yeah.
If you really want to be contrarian, you also could be dead at 4:30 p.m. or no 5:30 because the game's at.
Yeah, well, hold on. Which game's the second game is the Chiefs game, right? Yeah, I'm just gonna go all in on the Chiefs game because I don't want to be dead already. Like before it's dark.
You want hope?
Yeah, I want hope. Yeah, Denny. I know this may shock you.
All right.
I guess it may shock our audience that this wonderful episode of Rotoworld Football Show is over.
I don't think they're that shocked. They seem to know it's about time.
Yeah, we just did 66 minutes on 2 games, folks.
Hey, there's some coach talk in there. But yeah, I mean, we got to talk about some IGP Ryan. This is pretty simple.
That's right.
No show until we do that.
I mean, it's essentially an extension of the showdown slate. It's something goofy's going to happen. My best teams last week were Kenneth Gainwell teams, and I literally only played him so I could jam Kelsey in. It was not even a good play. There was it's lucky stuff's going to happen when you condense the slate this small.
Yes.
And there will be a lot of chopping of pots probably too in the smaller field stuff.
So, Rich, we're so thankful you could join us today. What do you got going? What do you want to tell the listeners about?
No, I've written up all. What have we done? 280 games to this point. I can't remember. There's only one left for me to write up, and then obviously the NFL season's so cyclical. It just will be immediately jumping into like prospect stuff and dynasty content. We don't even get a break. I saw people already drafting best ball teams for next year.
I know.
We need just a little pause. Give me just one small piece where I could reset the track here, man.
Kyle, I'm begging your generation to just let us rest.
No. Not what they do. It's not what they do.
Please for everything.
So Rich Hribar is, of course, at Lord Reebs, REEBS.
Not Roto Reebs.
On Twitter, not Roto Reebs. One of the essential follows and writers in the entire industry. Rich, thank you so much for joining us. For Denny Carter, for Kyle Dvorchak, I am Patrick Daugherty. Thank you for listening. We'll be back Sunday night to break down what we just saw on Sunday.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.